All right, hey guys, this is the first of two videos that you will watch to introduce industrial America, and I'm going to be using Edpuzzle for this. You might have used Edpuzzle in some of your other classes, but if you have not, basically what Edpuzzle is like you watch this video of me going through the slides. I'm recording my screen right now, and as you go through the video, you answer questions. Okay. And then, like, it shows me that you've answered the questions and all that stuff. So while I go through these, I want you guys to take notes. And then, just like normal class, when a question pops up, like if I call on you in class, you'd answer, you type in on the computer, and then I'll see your answers later. Okay. So this is the first of two. In this first video, we're mainly just looking at like the causes of industrialization that we're about to start talking about. So, if you want to write this down in your notes, you can to start out with. So, obviously, I'm not going to give like 30 seconds with a video of me just staring at y'all because y'all can pause the screen and write all this down, right? And so but we are about to go through all four of these in this video. And this is also leading into checkpoint one of our project over industrialization. And again, the way the projects are going to work for this 9 weeks is we're going to pretty much do all of them in class. So you'll work on it individually and work with a partner. But these are the notes you need to start out with. Okay. So the new technology, there was a lot of new things that came about that helped industrialization. One of them is the tractor, and you're like, okay, cool. Like, why is that important? Well, obviously, with industrialization and also immigration that we're going to talk about here in a second, you had more people. Okay, more people means a higher demand for food. Tractors allowed farmers to be able to obviously harvest more crops. So this shows you that the industrialization of America, we want to make it all about like, oh, it was all this stuff happening in the cities, nothing was going on in the country. People were moving away from the country. Well, part of it was because they didn't need as many people living in the country to produce the food. So the tractor was a very, very big advancement in technology. Okay, because again, it allowed them to grow more crops, feed more people. Skyscrapers, obviously. Okay, we'll talk about steel. Andrew Carnegie in the steel industry. Because of this high supply of steel, we were able to build these strong skyscrapers, these buildings that move up and down throughout cities. And so obviously this was a big shift as opposed to like the early to even the mid 1800s, because you had these office buildings popping up everywhere in these big cities like Chicago, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, wherever. And it was using all this steel to build these skyscrapers, kind of like the office buildings we see today in larger cities. Okay. So skyscrapers was definitely a big advancement. And it was considered new technology because, again, this has never been attempted before. And then all of a sudden, we have skyscrapers popping up. Light bulb. Okay. And I should have elaborated a little bit there. Light bulb was big, but just electricity. Okay. Obviously, the advancement of electricity was huge. Okay, because it allowed the factories to run, the machines that were being invented to work better. And so electricity was definitely a very, very important new technology to industrialization. Okay, next up is oil. That was especially big because like tractors and the automobiles that were coming out, you got to have something to make them run. And also some machines. And the factories at this time ran on oil. Okay, and that's one thing we'll look at in checkpoint one, because this video is about the causes of the industrial growth in America, but checkpoint one is all about that. So you guys will be either working with partners or in groups. I haven't decided yet, but you'll be looking at all these charts and all this data showing like the reasons that we had all of this industrial growth in America all at once. Okay, so these are just some of my examples of new technology with industrialization. But I want you guys to think right here, and this is not a right or wrong answer. Okay, I want you guys to think about y'all's lifetime. So most of y'all born around 2004, 2005, past 16 years, 15, 16, 17 years, whatever. And this is opinion. I want you to write in on this next question what you think is the most significant technological advancement in your lifetime, and tell me why. Okay, so go ahead and do that. Also, go back to industrialization, kind of shifting back to the time period. These four things right here, which do you think is the most significant out of these four? Okay, and why? So these four things. What do you think was the most significant in this industrialization of America? And also, push you guys a step further. What's one that you think I'm missing from the list that was big? Okay, because there's definitely a lot of things I could have put on there. I just narrowed it down to four. But what's one thing you think might be missing from the list and why? Okay, moving on. Railroads. This was obviously big. Okay, because there was a major growth in railroads after the Civil War, and this stimulated or caused this economic growth. Okay, in other words, railroads were the first major injury, or excuse me, not injury, industry. Railroads were the first major industry in the United States. Okay, so think about this. Why would railroads have to be a booming industry, or did they have to be the first major industry before we really saw a surge in other industries becoming major? So, like the steel and oil industry becoming major. Why did the railroads have to come first before we saw all these other industries explode and go forward with industrialization? Write that down. I'll tell you the answer in a second. Okay, there is no right or wrong answer here, but obviously part of it is that if you have these railroads, it lays out that infrastructure for all this trade, all these supplies going to factories or from factories, whatever, all these goods. Okay, so it was really considered the first major industry because as we'll see, and as you guys will see in video two, Cornelius Vanderbilt, he was on it. He was on the railroad game. Okay, he dominated that. Okay, but it was the first major industry because it laid that foundation for all the other industries because again they could ship their goods and they were able to get supplies to their factories. Okay, so railroad just right here, this shows you all the amount of connections that there were in the railroads. In class I'm going to show you guys like the graph showing like how many railroads there were in the United States the year 1860 and how many there were even by the 1880s, about a 20-year span. It is mind blowing the difference. Okay. Like right here, the first transcontinental railroad that we always hear about, the big problem was getting it across the Rockies. So in this area, right here. Okay. But it went from Omaha, Nebraska, right here, all the way out to Sacramento, California. Okay. Growing labor supply and expanding market. So we're going to talk about immigration more in this class once we get to like the 1900s, early 1900s especially, but it was a factor right here. So more workers come from Europe through immigration, and obviously all these new people coming in. If you're a business owner, what do you have? You have a growing labor supply. Okay, so immigration was a major factor in there being more workers, excuse me, coming into America. Now, more people to buy goods with all this new people, obviously. And also, you have more capital needed to make finished products. So that's why this market was expanding. Okay. Because obviously, like if I'm building, cars, if I'm Henry Ford and I'm building cars, I'm going to need other things. Okay. I'm going to need other things like, the steel or whatever. Okay. So I'm going to depend on other companies to give me what I need. So as we keep advancing and all these new products start coming up, you're going to need more of the other things needed to make the finished products. Okay. So you need more capital. And we'll talk about like the three big factors of economic production in class. You have your land, like the property that your business is on, your labor, that's obviously who works for you. Your capital is basically all the things you need to make your business go. Okay. So all the supplies you need to build something, all your machinery, all that stuff. So obviously, as we industrialize, there is a bigger demand for more of this capital needed to make the finished products or the things that are needed in the stages of production. Okay. All right. I'm going to give you guys a second to put a question that I will look at later. So type in if you have a question so far. If you don't have any questions, just put no questions on this next question. Okay. Next up, favorable government policies. Okay. So in the past, the state governments had heavily regulated the trade of any industries. they gave companies something called charters, okay? And basically what this means is that the corporations had a ceiling on how much they could invest. And what I mean by that is like kind of like the ceiling in here. Okay, back, I have plenty of room right now. Back when I was looking at apartments, there was literally one where the ceiling was about 6.5 feet. Like, like the top of the ceiling was about 6 inches from my head. Okay, that was a low ceiling. Okay, so a low ceiling for investment obviously means that people could not invest as much. Corporations could not invest as much, into their company. And also like how many products they could produce. So they basically gave them a quota. It's like the government was like, I don't care if, there's 1,000 more people wanting your product. You've already produced all that you can this month. Okay. That's what a charter basically did. It really limited the businesses, okay, and how much they could do. Okay. So that is what a charter was before we really got into the industrialization of America, is that it really held businesses back. Okay. Now, moving on. But with industrialization, okay, and I think, can I move myself? Oh, whoa, that's freaky. Um, with industrialization, the government had a quote unquote laissez-faire approach with corporations. In other words, laissez-faire means hands off. Okay, they had a very hands off approach with how they handled corporations. They weren't giving them charters. They were not giving them quotas. They were not giving them ceilings. Basically, it was every man for himself. If a corporation could go out and churn out, a gazillion products in a month and crush all the other guys, cool. Government didn't care. They were going to let the corporations do that. Okay? So that little interference, again, they let them do what they want in this case with industrialization. Before this, the state governments really did a lot to kind of limit or hold back, the corporations. And you're like, okay, why did the state governments ever let up? Well, here's the thing. Once once Illinois lifts those regulations and their economy starts booming, as we'll see with industrialization, then all the other states, if you're Kentucky, then you'd be like, oh, well, I don't want to fall behind my state's economy to fall behind, so I'm going to do it too. Okay. So in this case, it was a very, very laid back approach. So the government was not getting involved with corporations. Okay. Moving on. Okay. That will lead us into the next video. So thank you guys for watching, and go on to video number 2.